Welcome back to HQ Spotlight. Haley Sutton tapping in. 52 days away until the upcoming NFL draft. Of course, all eyes are on the combine this weekend as prospects tried to boost their draft stock. And of course, it is Monday. So we are tapping in for our annual mock draft. I say annual, weekly is probably the better way to put it. The weekly mock draft that comes every Monday. But we got a little twist today. This is the first post-combine mock draft that we have. So let's get to it. Let's waste no more time as we welcome in our crew. I've got Mike Renner to my left, sitting here in studio. We also welcome in Emory Hunt, who's in for Ryan Wilson. More on that in a minute. We've also got Pete Prisco and Leger Douzable joining us. Of course, this is the first time, guys, that we've assigned picks for this. So, of course, it's the mayor of Jacksonville getting the first pick and Pete Prisco. But before we get things going, guys, we have a very special guest getting ready to join the show for just a sec. I know that Roger Goodell usually kicks things off out at the Combine. He gets the booze and he makes the big speech. Well, somebody has a very special message for all of you guys, so take a listen.
Hello, boys. There are actually 52 days left until the NFL draft. And while you guys are yucking it up on this mock draft coming up, I am actually working very hard to aid Darren Muji, the new general manager of the New York Jets, in the real draft coming up. Few words I'd like to say. Ryan Wilson, I'm sad to see that you're not on the show today. I heard that you went on IR. The one thing I respected the most, there's no one that watches more tape than you do to get ready for the show. But please, when you come back and as you go forward, do not ever give pro comps because you're the worst pro comp giver I've ever been around. Mike Renner, Pete Prisco is going to try to bully you around. You also do a great job getting prepared for these mock drafts, understanding these kids when they're coming out, but do not crawdad back when Pete Prisco starts getting on you. Dooz and Emory, hang in there with these guys. I know that you'll make the show a lot better. And my final word, Mr. Pete Prisco. He comes up with the best, all then better team than anyone I've ever known and identifies all these names that people haven't heard of to become excellent football players in the NFL. The one thing I'll say about Pete Prisco, learn the game. Good luck, boys.
So maybe we might have some booze after that spiel. I kind of just want to open the table. Pete, I got to come to you first because I felt that in my soul there. What'd you think of your good friend Rick's message?
You know, it's funny. I saw him last week, spent some time with him, and one thing he has done is he has learned the game by spending a lot of Sundays with me in that room over there watching the game. So kudos to him. He's gotten a lot better since his days with the Vikings.
All right. I wish I had time for all of you guys to react to the message. I guess just keep that in the back pocket for some bulletin board material. But let's get into our mock draft. Pete, as I mentioned, you got the first pick in this one. It is the Titans who have that #1 overall pick. So get us started here. What's the play when it comes to the Titans?
As much as I wanted to take one of the two quarterbacks, I just couldn't bring myself to do it because I think you're forcing it if you do. Yeah, they have quarterback needs, but talking to some people around that team, they're going to do a lot of work on the quarterbacks. But in the end, I'm going to go with Abdul Carter. I think you can get a generational pass rusher. I know he's got the foot injury. I talked to some people about that injury. I don't think it's as severe as it maybe led on last week. So I'm going to go with Abdul Carter, the outside pass rusher, and he's going to change the way they rush the quarterback rather than taking one of the two quarterbacks.
All right. A note here. I love our research team because they always give us some really great resources. Only 5 of the past 30 first overall picks have been defensive players. So we'll see how that shakes out for Mr. Carter. We're going to Emory Hunt next, who is stepping in for Ryan Wilson, as we heard Rick Spielman allude to. Ryan Wilson on IR a little bit. So we want to start this by saying, Emory, these are not your picks. You were just reacting in the messenger. But we're going to the Cleveland Browns with that #2 overall pick. What is Ryan Wilson taking?
But I would have agreed with Ryan Wilson here. You could just flip a coin. I would take Shedeur Ward or Cam Sanders. It doesn't matter. They're both outstanding quarterbacks. I would say I love Ryan's pick here of Cam Ward for the Browns. True alpha canine is going to be under center for Cleveland.
All right, one of the top quarterbacks in this year's class. There's been a lot of questions about them. I don't mind it. Over 4,300 passing yards there. We are going to the Giants next. Leger, that is your pick. They need a lot, but I'm kind of interested in this one. Tell us more about the #3 pick for the Giants.
Yeah, I'm muddled between taking Shedeur Sanders here, but, the Giants have done extensive work on a lot of these veterans that are going to be free agents or maybe guys that are willing or wanting to get traded. So I went with the best overall athlete in this draft class, and Travis Hunter. They need, Haley, a corner in the absolute worst way, and that's what Travis Hunter is. He's one of the best ball-hawking corners in all of football. Does a really good job being able to high-point the football, understanding route concepts, understanding zone concepts as well. And then he could moonlight on the other side on offense. Now, they do have Malik Neighbors and a few other pieces on that side of the ball, but they need his services on defense in the worst way. I think he moonlights for the Giants on offense. I think this is a no-brainer pick for the New York Giants.
Lige, let me ask you this real quick. Is this a pick where we're thinking Travis Hunter's going to play corner and maybe the potential to play wide receiver up in New York, or you think they're drafting him as a cornerback?
Yeah, I think he'll play cornerback and he'll moonlight on the offensive side. Now, what does that look like, Haley? Maybe 5 to 7 snaps on offense, but he's going to be their number one corner. They drafted Deonte Banks a few years ago. Just hasn't worked out there in New York. They need a lockdown corner in the worst way, and that's what Travis Hunter provides.
All right. Good thing that he can have that wide receiver skill in his back pocket. Mike Renner, I'm coming to you to my left. The Patriots have that number 4 pick. Everyone has been screaming for them to take an offensive line to protect Drake May, but not you, apparently.
I'm not going offensive line here. You have the number 4 overall pick for a reason. It's because you weren't good, because you had a lot of needs on this roster. Offensive tackle, obviously one of them. We'll see how it gets addressed in free agency, if at all. But still, if I'm comparing Mason Graham from the Michigan defensive tackle, who's the pick here, with Will Campbell, the LSU offensive tackle, or any of these offensive linemen, I have a much, much higher grade on Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. I think he's one of the safest picks in this entire draft class. Maybe he's not Jalen Carter, but not a lot of guys are. And you can still be a very productive player as number 4 overall pick. So the run defense was lackluster in New England last year. This is the best run defender in this draft class at this very moment in time. I love the pick. That's why I made it.
Yeah, I was going to say, even putting him in the same conversation as Jalen Carter, it sounds to be like it would be a good fit there, so we'll see. Pete, you are back up on the clock. It is the Jaguars with the number 5 overall pick. Who you taking?
By the way, this is the worst case scenario for Jacksonville sitting there at number 5. This is exactly what they don't want to happen. They'd like to see the quarterbacks go off the board and have a choice between Graham and Travis Hunter. So in this situation, where do I go? I go with another defensive lineman. I go with Derek Harmon from Oregon. I know it's high, but when you look around this draft board, where are they going? McMillan, the wide receiver, maybe. There's also some talk about Will Campbell, but where do you play him? Do you draft a guard that high? Do you take Booker? He's a guard. Do you take that guy that high? So they're kind of in no man's land here. I'm going to go with a big need on that team, and I'm going to go with Harmon. Probably overdrafted a little bit, but hey, they have to fill that need on the defensive side of the ball.
Defense wins championships. The Jags now have 12 or more losses for the 7th time in their last 13 seasons, so they need some work all across the board, but we're starting with defense in that opening round. All right, Emery, you are on the clock with Ryan Wilson's number 6 pick for the Raiders. Who's he taking?
He's taking Shedeur Sanders, this is the ideal selection for Vegas. And I'm sending bouquets of poker chips to Tennessee and New York for passing on the obvious QB here. And I'm taking this guy because, again, reminds me so much of Joe Burrow. I don't care what Pete says. I like this fit for the Raiders. I like this fit for the AFC. Just keeps stockpiling quarterback talent on that side of the conference.
Renner, while I've got you here in studio, when it comes to Shedeur Sanders going to the Raiders, it's not so much just a quarterback problem. It seems like there's problems all across the offense as well. So when you plug Shedeur into the Raiders, who's he going to throw to? Do you see success there?
Brock Bowers. I mean, it's the same guy that everyone threw to last year, but they need more than just that, right? I mean, they got Brock Bowers, you got Michael Mayer, but you kind of need a full complement of wide receivers. So if the first-round pick Shedeur, I fully expect your second and third-round picks to be weapons for him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for all of these guys going to these teams that need a lot of work. All right, Lige, our defensive guy on the panel here. We're talking Jets. And the Jets need a lot. Quarterback would probably be the one that comes front to mind. Maybe they get it later in the round, but Lige, you're going a different direction here.
Yeah, I'm going with the offensive line. Now, I could have went Tetairoa McMillan and paired him with Garrett Wilson, but they have a really good young offensive lineman, Olu Fashanu, who went in and started half the season at left tackle, played really well. Joe Tippmann at center, second-year player, played extremely well. They have Elijah Vera Tucker and John Simpson. I want to solidify this offensive line. Now, I know it's not the easiest thing for a left tackle to make the transition to right tackle, but the history has shown us it's easier for a left tackle to go to right tackle than a left tackle to go, or a right tackle to go to left tackle. So I took Will Campbell from LSU. To me, he's the most complete and pro-ready offensive lineman. You heard Pete talk about it earlier. Some people feels like he can slide into guard. I think with his athletic ability, he can stay at tackle and really solidify this offensive line. The Jets want to be consistent in running the football with first-year head coach Aaron Glenn. I solidify that offensive line by taking Will Campbell.
Is this a former Jets player approved pick with Will Campbell?
Oh, without a doubt. Pete, what's your message always? Get big people. Get more big people. This will solidify the Jets' offensive line for sure.
All right. Pete, I do want to bring you into the conversation here because I mentioned the quarterback. The Aaron Rodgers situation is officially done up there for the Jets. But I'm curious, do you see them going into this draft to take a quarterback, or do you think that's a position that they'll address in free agency or somewhere else?
Well, they're kind of in no man's land when it comes to the quarterback situation unless they go up. And that's going to be something you really don't want to do. Particularly, I don't think these guys are enamored with these quarterbacks in this class. So I think they're going to go free agency route and try and piece it together. Remember, it's a new organization right now. It's a new look. It's a new coach, a new GM. So they have time. They don't have to panic like some of the other teams. So they'll be patient.
All right. We have time for one more pick in our opening round here on CBS Sports HQ Spotlight. Mike Renner, you have that last pick. It is the Panthers picking at 8. Who are they taking?
I'm going Jalen Walker, the edge defender out of Georgia. Off-ball, on-ball linebacker hybrid. And the Carolina Panthers uniquely are one of the few teams in the NFL that run like a true 3-4. They had Jadeveon Clowney, who's not a 3-4 outside linebacker, dropping into coverage almost 50 times last year. Jalen Walker is a guy who is much, much more comfortable doing that role than a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. That's the role he played at Georgia. I mean, he could truly cover and rush the passer at a very high level. So I think the Panthers specifically would really love him, really fall in love with this guy, and it's the role that they have that no one else really in the top of this draft class fills.
I'm rooting for the Panthers after the drama last year with Bryce Young and how everything has looked the last few years, so I hope that helps. All right, guys, round 1 is done. Let's take a break. We're going to take a look back here at how we picked that first round. So despite the foot scare at the Combine, we are rolling with the top edge rusher in the class in Abdul Carter. That was Pete Prisco's #1 overall pick to the Titans, along with the top 2 quarterbacks getting off the board in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. All right, so we're going to round out the top 10 and then some after the break. We have yet to see a tight end taken through those first 8 spots, but maybe that could change after the break. We'll talk about it. Welcome back to HQ Spotlight. It is Mock Draft Monday, post-Combine edition. Our experts already gave out their picks for 1 through 8, so we're going to pick it up with pick number 9, which is held by the Saints. That means, Pete Prisco, you are back on the clock.
Yeah, they need to improve their secondary. They have problems at the corner position. Adebo is an unrestricted free agent. I think he's out the door. So I'm going to go with Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan. And I know he's coming off an injury-plagued season. There's some concerns about his 40 time. When will he run and how fast will he run? But I think a year ago he was one of the best corners in the college football. I think he'll play well for them. I'm going to take Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, in this spot.
That's a great pick, Pete. Every time the Saints went out there, they were already down 7-0. They need so much help in that secondary, and Will Johnson gives them a huge opportunity. I'm going to go with Chicago Bears offensive lineman Kelvin Banks. That's what Ryan picked. I can understand the tackle, but that's because of big tackle propaganda. I would have went Tyler Booker, the guard, because guard center guard is where you have success offensively. And I kind of think they're making Braxton Jones out to be the scapegoat, but I can understand getting Kelvin Banks. You can't go wrong with getting one of the top tackles in the class.
I just knew, Emery, you were up to no good whenever our producer Stryker came in my ear and said you were following there. All right, let's move on to Lige. The 49ers get that pick at number 11. They finished last in the West, which was a shock to many, I think, Lige. So who are they taking at number 11 that's going to hopefully get them back on track?
Yeah, I went with edge rusher Mike Green from Marshall. He led all the NCAA in sacks last year, was second in TFLs. They have Nick Bosa on one side, and they do have Leonard Floyd, but he's got a contract they could potentially get off from under, or they could continue to use him this year. He's only got 1 more year left on his deal. You bring in Mike Green, and he can grow with a guy like Nick Bosa. Again, ultra productive from the outside. People worried about the competition he played. Well, just go turn on that Ohio State tape, man. They couldn't block him either. Only stayed at the Senior Bowl for 2 days because nobody could block him there as well. So I think the 49ers, with Robert Saleh going back to that team, they want to be able to get after the passer. They do that with Mike Green.
Yeah, the 49ers went from ranking 2nd in points per game, allowing points per game, I should say, from the years 2021 to 2023 to 29th in 2024. So to your point, the defensive side of the ball could really be helped out there. We are going to pick number 12, which is my personal favorite pick in this class because it is the Dallas Cowboys pick. I know, gentlemen, there's been a lot of conversation about them potentially taking a running back, maybe Ashton Jeanty, but Renner, this is your pick, and I got to be honest with you. You get an A+ from me.
You do? Okay, Armand Membou, the Missouri offensive tackle. I think they have obviously that big need at right guard. Zach Martin has big shoes to fill. I think the best way to do it is to kick Terrence Steele inside and draft a right tackle in Armand Membou. That's where he played at Missouri. If you watch the combine over the weekend, this is the biggest freak athlete in this offensive line class. Extremely explosive at over 330 pounds, ascending, only 20 years old. So with the Cowboys and their track record of development along the offensive line, you get this guy in the fold, he could very well be an all-pro sooner rather than later. And that kind of rounds out this offensive line. Fully youngsters, but the future looks bright if they do get him in that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the rookies we drafted last year, maybe some seeing Awesome Richard pop back in there. We saw him drafted a couple of years ago. Pete, though, I want to come to you because I know that the Cowboys have a lot of needs for a lot of things. Do you think that the offensive line, to Mike's point, is where they should start with that pick, or are you going a different direction?
Look, if you're going to get a good, talented offensive lineman who can play tackle or guard and kind of fit him in where you need him, yes, you take that in that spot. I'm all for that. Like I said, like Leger said, you can never have enough big people on your football team because there's only so many of them who can play the game and play it well. So I would be all for that pick.
All right. Well, how did you pronounce his name? Armand Membou?
Membou.
Okay, that's why I didn't say it. I didn't want to get it wrong. But he does have an extensive list when it comes to his experience, over 2,000 career snaps. So hopefully he can get my Dallas Cowboys back to being America's team like we always say we do. Let's pivot to the Dolphins. The Dolphins need a lot as well. Another one of those teams. They had a hard time keeping Tua on the field. He was not very healthy. But, Pete, you're looking at this number 13 pick, maybe trying to help him stay healthy next season with an offensive lineman.
Yeah, and I think the offensive lineman I'm picking Tyler Booker out of Alabama, the guard, is the best offensive lineman in this class. But he's a guard, so there's not really anything sexy about taking a guard. And most teams will be reluctant to take a pure guard anywhere near the top 10. But when you look at the Dolphins, Armstead's probably retiring. That means Patrick Paul is in at left tackle. They have that position solved. All their guards are unrestricted free agents, so they have to get an offensive guard. I think Booker's a plug and play and will be a long-time starter for the Miami Dolphins.
Moving on to the 14th pick, that belongs to the Colts, which also belongs to Ryan Wilson, which then belongs to Emory. There's a lot of things going on in this mock draft. So Emory, the Colts taking a tight end here, according to our Ryan Wilson. Colston Loveland, the first one taken off the board. What do you like about him in the fit?
I love the tight end pick. Colston Loveland is a great tight end, I will say that. But I would have gone with Tyler Warren. The reason why the Colts have made it known that they want to make sure Anthony Richardson is out there healthy for a full 17-game season. Well, a lot of his hits come in those short yardage goal line situations. Guess who could take his place? Tyler Warren, who's a wildcat quarterback that can also throw the football. That saves a couple of plays from Anthony Richardson, but Colton Loveland is someone that also gets down the field. They do need help at tight end. That's a quarterback security safety blanket. They don't have one of note right now. So whether it's Loveland or Warren, I love the position pick here for Indianapolis.
Leger, how do you feel? Where are you on the Colston versus Tyler Warren conversation here? Do you like the pick at Colston going to the Colts, or would you agree with Emory?
Yeah, I don't mind it because, to Emory's point, Colston Loveland can really help you down the seam. He's going to be that security blanket for Anthony Richardson. But when you talk about the complete tight end, that's what Tyler Warren is. He can do so many things, Haley. When you talk about wildcat quarterback, shoot, they even had him snap it at center, and he ran down the seam and caught a touchdown pass versus USC. So this guy can do it all. Wildcat quarterback. They give him end arounds. He's physical. He will rip your face off in the run game. So to Emory's point, I could see them leaning towards Tyler Warren because they have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, and they want to establish the run game. And that's where I think the difference between Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. But Colston Loveland is a hell of a player as well.
Yeah, I actually have Loveland higher on my board than Warren. But for the Colts specifically, with how much they run, you want the inline blocking guy. Loveland is an awesome wide receiver. They have some awesome wide receivers there in Indy. They just don't find the football because they're a run-heavy offense. So for the Colts specifically, I'm going Tyler Warren, but they are neck and neck on my board. Those guys, just draft them. They're great.
Either way, you can't go wrong. Spoiler alert here, we don't have to wait very long to hear Tyler Warren's name called in this mock draft, so you'll have to tune in to see where he's going there. Leger, I hand things back over to you. We got to talk about the Falcons with the pick number 15. They missed the playoffs for the 7th straight season. That is tied for the second longest active NFL drought, so they got some work to do there. What are they doing with that pick?
I'm going with my favorite player in the draft, and that's Jahdae Barron. And Pete knows I have an affinity for this guy. I spent some time with him at the Combine. So multiple in what he can do on the defensive side. Besides A.J. Terrell, they really struggled at the corner position. Yes, I could have maybe went edge rusher here, but I went with the versatility of Jahdae Barron, right? Raheem Morris is a defensive-minded coach. They need somebody in that back end that can play multiple positions, whether it's the outside corner or in the slot as well. He even played a little bit of safety at Texas. So I think he, from day one, pairing with A.J. Terrell makes them one of the best young tandems in all of football at the cornerback position. I went Jahdae Barron from Texas for the Falcons.
All right, we're wrapping this up with another bird. It is the Cardinals, and it is Mike Renner who has the pick there at number 16. Which direction you going?
Some great synergy with this pick because their biggest need, defensive tackle, aligns with my top guy available on my draft board, Walter Nolan, the Ole Miss defensive tackle. He's a high-end athlete, a pure three-tech sort of guy, but he can get up the field and also can affect both run and pass. And so for the Arizona Cardinals team that drafted an edge last year, traded for an edge guy, they still haven't addressed that interior of that defensive line. It's one of, if not the worst in the NFL. This guy immediately provides an upgrade from day one. Love his faith and think he'd be a day one starter for them.
Walter Nolan, 6.5 sacks last season. That is the last pick in our second round here on Spotlight. So take a look back at what our experts have selected. No running backs in this round. There's been a lot of folks that were saying that the Cowboys could take, or that Ashton Jeanty could take the Cowboys to the next level, but we'll have to wait and see. We see our first tight end as well. Colston Loveland gets the nod over Tyler Warren. We'll have to see where Tyler Warren goes in this mock draft. So we're through the first 16. Still no Ashton Jeanty, the Heisman runner-up, waiting to hear his name called in this mock draft Monday. Maybe we're partnering him with a Heisman finalist of their own. Stick with us on Spotlight. Back here on HQ Spotlight, Haley Sutton alongside Mike Renner, Emory Hunt, in for Ryan Wilson, Pete Prisco, and Lige Douzable. We are doing our mock draft Monday, and guys, we are picking it up with the number 17 pick. That, of course, belongs to the Bengals, who already had some big news in themselves today. They have franchise tagged T. Higgins, so for right now, at least, he's sticking around for one more year out in Cincinnati. But that does not mean, Pete, that there's some pieces that they could replace. We saw Joe Burrow really get comfortable with the tight end Mike Gesicki this year and a couple of other guys, and you're leaning that way as well with this pick at 17.
Well, Mike Gesicki is an unrestricted free agent. They'd like to bring him back, but we'll see. The other part of that equation is Eric All got hurt last year, tore up his knee, and now he's out probably for a long time, at least deep into the season. So they have a major need there. So I'm going to go with Tyler Warren. I mean, if he's going to fall this far to me, I'll be glad to swoop him up and take him and add him to this offense. Another guy who can block. We mentioned that earlier, but I also think he's a much better receiver sometimes than he gets credit for. So I'll gladly take Tyler Warren in this spot and add him to the offense. And go ahead, everybody. Try and stop that offense with all those guys on the field.
That's going to be nasty. Joe Burrow always seems to figure out a way on offense. Emory, before we get to your pick, I'm curious, do you like the fit of Tyler Warren there up in Cincinnati?
Absolutely. And what's underrated about Cincinnati, they kind of nailed these skill positions going back to Carson Palmer. They always find good receivers, good running backs. So I could see them doing this in a real draft because it just makes so much sense not to.
Okay. Yeah, I can't even imagine the Bengals getting that much more lethal on offense when you've also got to pay Jamar Chase, but we'll get there when we get there. Let's go to the number 18 pick, which belongs to our Emory Hunt, and it also belongs to the Seahawks. You were thinking offensive lineman here. Emory, tell us more about your pick.
Well, Ryan chose Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State, who is coming off a 16-game regular season, which ended in the national championship, went out there to the Senior Bowl and participated in every drill and in the game, and then he went to the Combine, did every drill and everything. So he is putting together a lot of great tape. He was outstanding in Mobile, and he has just capitalized on that at the Combine and probably talked himself into a first-round pick. But this is where I disagree with Ryan, because this is Mike McDonald, the defensive guy. Shamar Stewart is sitting right there on the board, man on that defensive line for Seattle. And plus, we got to start giving these guys that we just drafted last year a chance to grow. We took Christian Haynes in round 3, a very good player out of UConn. Let's get him out there and get him a chance to start. I can understand Greg Zabel, great talent, but Shamar Stewart, I will be hard-pressed in Seattle under that head coach to pass him up.
Yeah, Shamar seems like a good fit up there with that defense and what we've seen out of the Seahawks over the years. So we'll have to see. Again, Ryan's picks, not yours. That's why I emphasized it off the top of the show here. Let's go to pick number 19. Lige, the Bucks picking at that spot. We know the Bucs had the most TFL, or excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Tell us the pick, and then I've got the follow-up information there.
Well, yeah. Well, hey, I just want to go back a pick because I think what Ryan was thinking is the Seahawks really struggled at the center position. Me and Pete had this discussion at the Combine. Oluwatimi, he showed up and played really well. They took him from Michigan a few years ago, I think in like the 6th round, but he couldn't stay healthy as well. So I think Gray's able, and he showed this at the Senior Bowl, he can play all 5 positions on the football field, but I think from day one, he would elevate them at the center position. Now let's get to my pick with the Tampa Bay Bucs. I'm sure Pete will love this pick. James Pierce. Going into this season, a lot of people thought James Pierce would be the #1 overall pick coming into this draft, right? Super explosive. We saw him literally tear up the combine. And you see it right there, his rankings in the SEC the last 2 years, right? First in sacks, first in TFLs, first in pressures. Ran a 4.47, Haley, at 6'5", 245 pounds. You put him on the opposite side of Yaya Diaby, now you really have some explosive ability coming off the edge. Yes, they still have Joe Tryon, but he's a guy that they've kind of mixed in. He's kind of going to be like their third outside backer. I love James Pierce and the combination with Yaya Diaby for that defense for Tampa Bay coming off the edge and getting after quarterbacks.
I like it, too. He was such a game wrecker at Tennessee, and to your point, if it weren't for Abdul Carter, we'd probably be talking about him and maybe a little bit higher in this conversations. We're going to the pick number 20, which belongs to Sean Payton and his Broncos. We were talking, Mike, before we came up here, that this is kind of like ultimate synergy for me personally. You like Ashton Jeanty going out there to Denver.
Yeah, the Boise State Bronco becomes a Bronco at the next level, the leading rusher, second in the Heisman voting. Not a lot of teams are going to draft a running back in the first round, right? We kind of have this conversation every year. But Sean Payton, he's done it twice already. So I think he'd be one that would. We've obviously seen what he did with Alvin Kamara in New Orleans, having that guy. Jeanty has a similar skill set. The guy can catch out of the backfield. Had over 50 catches as a sophomore. Didn't get featured much in that regard this past year because, well, they just wanted to hand it to him as much as humanly possible. The guy was untackleable. He is the best running back in this draft class and has real deal home run speed. You give that weapon to Bo Nix, it makes his life easier. And all those checkdowns that everyone likes to hate on Bo Nix for, well, they can become big plays with this guy in the backfield.
I love the story that he told you guys at the Combine as well, Ashton Jeanty, when he was talking about his coach in high school and why he was never able to get caught from behind. And he said it was his high school coach saying that he wouldn't have a seat on the bus if anyone ever caught him from behind. So he is truly a special prospect. I'm wondering, Pete, as a guy who maybe doesn't always love the running backs in these conversations, is Ashton Jeanty a guy you can get behind?
Oh, I love his game. There's no question about that. I think it's spot on. I just think this running back class is so deep, I wouldn't force it. I think you can get running backs across the board to second and third round that are going to be big-time contributors. So I wouldn't do this if I were them. I understand it. I understand the kid's a good player. I also have a problem when the running back pick the first running back taken sees eye to eye with me. That's usually a problem when you're picking your running back. So that is a little bit of a concern. I know there's been comparisons to Maurice Jones-Drew, who was a heck of a player back in Jacksonville, but I don't think Jeanty is as powerful as Maurice was back in the day. He is a good player. I understand the pick. Would I do it? Absolutely not.
Emery, I don't know. What do you think as our resident college running back on staff? I'm curious your thoughts on Pete there.
Actually, I agree with Pete because here's the thing. When you look at the difference between Jeanty and whoever you have as RB2, it's probably not that big of a difference. So, yeah, you could, if there's a position player that can help you out in another position, I would agree with Pete there and then take him for the Broncos. But where I love Jeanty is that it kind of puts Jaleel McLaughlin in a more realistic RB2 complementary role. So now you have a good 1-2 punch, which they didn't have last season.
All right, so I wasn't expecting Emery to agree with Pete, so I'm still a little shook on that. But we go to Pete.
He's
next.
learning. He's learning the game from me. So that's right.
All right, Pete, you're back on the clock. The Steelers got the number 21 overall pick. We know that they had some issues at quarterback this past season, trying to decide who was going to be their guy. Still some questions at quarterback going into this season, but you're taking a guy that maybe whoever is going to play quarterback can throw to.
Yeah, and I still think Justin Fields might end up going back there. And if he does, they need to get him some weapons. George Pickens, look, he can do what he does down the field, deep ball threat, but he's inconsistent. He has issues. I know the Steelers don't draft wide receivers in the first round. The last time they did it was 2006 with Santonio Holmes. I'm going to buck the trend. I'm going to go with Ibuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State. I think he's such a complete player. He can do a lot of damage in the middle of the field. And whoever plays quarterback needs help. We saw that last year. Russell Wilson threw a bunch of moon balloon balls outside to George Pickens. He made him look good, but they need more than that. So I'm going to take the wide receiver Ibuka out of Ohio State.
I like the fit there. He can certainly maybe challenge George Pickens to not only, up his game, but maybe they could have some fun in the locker room as well. Emory, you talked about Shemar Stewart earlier. You didn't like where Ryan had him then. I'm wondering if you like where they have him now, as Ryan has him picking number 22 overall going to the Chargers. Do you like this fit?
Love it, because we know when they were together, Mack and Bosa could have been a potential problem for opposing offenses, but they were never there consistently because they weren't always healthy. But now you look at what they have left. They still have Bosa right now, but Stewart helps them out immediately. You have the growth of Tui Palatu, who I liked a lot coming out of USC. And now Stewart gives you someone that can play from the 9 to the nose. He can play across the defensive line, and it gives you the explosiveness. I think he's going to be a better pro than he was in college, a la Rashawn Gary. So I like this fit for the Chargers.
Do you prefer him with the Chargers or the Seahawks based on Ryan Wilson's mock that you are moderating for him?
I would have taken him earlier with the Seahawks because, defense, when the Seahawks were good, it's because they were threatening you on defense. And I think right there was a glaring need for them to pick up a guy that can play across the front under Mike McDonald.
Boy, oh boy, did the Combine do this guy much love, I'll tell you that. Mike, he had 4.5 sacks when he was in college. 4.5. Think about that for a second. And by the way, after watching his Combine workout, I went out and did watch some more tape on him. He is the slowest guy I've ever seen off the ball. Everybody gets off the ball and he's still in his stance. Yeah, he's good. He's athletic. He's tough. He's physical. But boy, there's a real projection there, and everybody has fallen in love with him. But based on Combine workouts, I just want to warn you, Mike Mamula back in the day, go look it up. It's always dangerous to do.
I was going to go to Leger because I was watching Leger's reaction, but Emory, you first, and then I want to hear from Leger.
Shout out to Mike Mamula. He had a long career as a decent player for Philadelphia out of Boston College. But Rashawn Gary had the same type of questions coming out. I know one-to-one is probably not the same, but they are similar guys in terms of their path to where they are now.
Yeah, me and Pete have had this discussion. Like, you are worried about the lack of production. I actually talked to Shemar Stewart about that when we interviewed him. And when you go back and watch tape, Pete, the thing is he's getting pressure on the quarterback. It's about the finish for him. And I know as a pass rusher, sometimes that weighs on you. And that would be my concern if you're taking a Shemar Stewart, right? Are you worried about his mentality? If he misses a sack or two, does that weigh on him for the rest of the game? Because I thought it affected him at times by watching his tape. But Emory talked about it. Like, he is a freak athletic defensive end that can get up the field and create pressure, and he can rush from the inside as well. So there's so many things you can do with him. To me, it's all about him just finishing. If he can get those pressures and quarterback hits and finish those with sacks, then you might have something cooking in them.
I like the size as well. I think that's one of those things that, you just can't add size to everybody. So it's an interesting conversation that I'm sure we'll have until April rolls around. Leger, you're back on the clock with the Packers. The Jaire Alexander experience has truly been a wild one up there in Green Bay, but we're seeing that is trending towards a close there. And you are potentially looking at the replacement here with this 23 pick.
Correct. And even if they were somehow able to fix his cap number, which is ridiculous this year, I think this would be the pick either way, because they need another corner outside of Jaire Alexander. And that's Trey Amos. He's kind of like the forgotten man when you talk about some of these first-round corners. But we asked Jackson Dart when we interviewed him who was the hardest corner he went against. And he was like, nobody I played against. It's the guy I practice against every day, in Trey Amos. Very instinctual, physical corner. He was one of the top corners in all the SEC. Now, Ole Miss had one of the top defenses in all of football, but I think he'd be a nice fit in that Jeff Hafley system up there in Green Bay, especially if they're going to lose Jaire Alexander.
Our Packers fan on site here. Do you like the pick, and what do you think of the Packers going into the offseason?
I like Trey Amos. I think he's a good player. I think day two, there's a lot more value in this cornerback class, whereas the wide receiver, which is a massive need for them right now, with Romeo Doubs' concussion issues, with Trishan Watson's lack of an ACL at the moment, I would go wide receiver. You just saw Matthew Golden run a 4.29. He's on the board. You saw Luther Burden run a 4.41. He's on the board. Both those guys have great ball skills. Could be their number one wide receiver in that offense from day one. If either of those guys land in Green Bay, if they're on the board, That's who I'd want.
All right, well, you were on the board next at pick number 24 with the divisional rival Vikings there. So we talked about what your Packers need to get better. What do their rivals need to get better with that pick?
I'm going Malachi Starks, the Georgia safety. Flip on this guy's tape, and it is incredible. The combine numbers, throw him out the window. The guy plays fast, and you saw it in the drills. He had the fastest speed in every single drill of the safeties at the combine, according to Next Gen Stats. The guy is a gamer through and through. And Brian Flores, that's what he looks for. He looks like for versatile guys like him in the secondary. And they have like 4 guys hitting for agency in the secondary right now. So if it's slot corner, he could play there. If it's outside corner, he could play there. If it's deep safety, he could play there. The guy is versatile. That's what you want in a Brian Flores coach defense. I think if he's on the board, I'd be hard-pressed to see the Vikings pass on a talent like his.
Yeah, you mentioned Brian Flores. Minnesota had the highest blitz rate in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. And then if you can get the secondary to match the production there on the inside, it is going to be scary hours in Minnesota. Here's a look back at our round 3 picks here on HQ Spotlight. Once a Bronco, always a Bronco. That's my biggest takeaway from this round. Ashton Jeanty going number 20 overall to the Denver Broncos, so he gets to keep his colors and his mascot. We had some questions, some conversation when it comes to Samar Stewart, but our Ryan Wilson likes him with the Chargers at number 22. After the break, Kansas City soon to be on the clock after flopping in the Super Bowl earlier this year. How they can get back there with another big pick. We'll talk about it next. Well, time flies when you're having fun. We're already on to our final round of Mock Draft Monday here on HQ Spotlight. Haley Sutton, Mike Renner, Pete Prisco, Lige Douzable, and Emery Hunt in for Ryan Wilson. We are picking it up with pick number 25. So, Pete, as you have done all day long, get us up to speed here. It is the Texans who have the number 25 overall pick. Which way are they going?
Yeah, and this is mandated by what happened with the receivers last year. You know, Diggs got hurt and he's unrestricted free agent. Tank Dell, we don't know if he's even going to play this year. They have to get a wide receiver to go with Nico Collins. I'm going to go with Luther Burden. I think he ran 4.4. That was impressive. I don't think he quite plays to that speed, but they need somebody who could do some damage and help take the pressure off Nico Collins, get C.J. Stroud back on track. So I'm going to go with the wide receiver Luther Burden out of Missouri.
We've had some interesting wide receiver conversations as the break was coming in and we were coming in, so I'm interested to see how the fans at home react to a couple of wide receiver conversations we are going to have. Emery, you're going to help us pick it up because Ryan has the number 26 pick with the Rams, and you are also looking at a wide receiver there. Who's it going to be?
Ryan took Matthew Golden out of Texas. Totally understand because the Rams right now only have Puka Nacua. So, yeah, you go and get someone that can help him out, take some of that pressure off him in coverage. Would have been fascinating to see if Teterow and McMillan could have gone here, but gives you kind of what they have already in Nacua. With Golden, you have someone that legitimately takes the top off the defense. And, again, I know he ran 4.2. I know Mike brought up a great point earlier that he doesn't really run 4.2, but he's so smooth. Maybe doesn't look like 4.2, kind of like Eric Dickerson. Didn't look like he was running fast, but you never really caught him from behind. So I expect this to be a good pick for the Rams. They do need wide receiver help.
Yeah, we have an article up on CBSSports.com right now ranking the winners and the losers of the Combine, and Matthew Golden actually one of those winners because of how quick he was on that 40 time, among other things. But important to note there. Lige, you are on the call, or on the clock, I should say, with number 27. That pick is owned by the Ravens. The Ravens' defense was strong, but you think it could be a little bit better after this pick?
Yeah, one thing the Ravens are going to do in the first and second round, they're going to take an edge guy. So I'm taking Mykel Williams. Now, they do have Odafe Oweh, and Kyle Van Noy has found the fountain of youth. He will be back for another year, but the versatility of Mykel Williams, he's a guy that was kind of playing out of position at Georgia, 3-4 guy. I actually think he likens kind of like Trayvon Walker when he came out, right? A lot of athletic ability. Now, this draft pick is going to be a projection, right? Because you see it right there. It didn't have gaudy sack numbers, right? 4.5, 5 sacks this last year. It was dealing with an ankle injury for most of the year as well. But with that great arm length that he has the flexibility to play 3-4 and or outside linebacker as well. When I talked to him and had the interview with him, he said his best skill set would be on the edge, either a 5 technique or a wide 9, so he could play that outside linebacker for the Ravens. Could have went corner here, but I didn't like any of the corners to take them this high in the draft that were left on the board. So I went with Mykel Williams.
Let's go to pick number 28, Mike Renner. That is you on the clock. When it comes to the Detroit Lions, boy, did the injury bug really affect them last season. So you'd like to think that they need depth at pretty much every spot going into the offseason here. But which direction are you going with the play?
I'm going defensive line. I think they've used some premium picks on some non-valuable positions in recent years, but they've hit on Michigan defensive lineman and Aiden Hutchinson, and now I'm going Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle, a big-bodied monster in the middle, can play anywhere up and down the defensive line because he's athletic enough. Unfortunately, we didn't get athletic testing at the combine, but we've heard rumblings from that Michigan staff that this guy is truly a freak of nature. We'll see at the pro day, but adding one more guy to that interior with Lee McNeil coming off a torn ACL, that's where the weak link of this defense is going to be addressed early on, and Kenneth Grant could grow into something special.
How about this? Defensive lineman tied for the most passes defended by a defensive lineman over the past 2 seasons. He had 10, so it's scary when a big guy can also get in there and use his hands to make a big impact there. By the way, the Lions also lost both their coordinators, so something to keep in mind as well during this process, too, as they are rebuilding. All right, Pete, we are back to you with pick number 29. It belongs to the Commanders, who have already made some splash plays. They traded for Deebo Samuel, so attacking the offense there. But your pick, you're attacking the defense here.
Yeah, and they need to get another corner. Look, Mikey Sanders still did a nice job playing outside last year, but in an ideal scenario, he plays in the slot. That's what he is. They brought him in to be a slot corner. He's much better in there. So get another corner to go with Lattimore, who also didn't play when he came over in a trade. It took him a while to get back on the field as well. So I'm going to go with Savon Ravel. By the way, there's an H in it. It's not pronounced. So out of East Carolina, he's coming off a torn ACL. Probably would be a much higher pick if it were not for the ACL. The kid's got all the athletic ability you want, can match up and play press man. I think this would be a great pick for the Commanders if they can add to that corner room.
We are going to the Bills next at number 30. Emery stepping in for our Ryan Wilson. And Ryan, the Bills take who? Or excuse me, Emery, the Bills take who with that 30th pick? I knew I was going to mess it up at some point.
Safety Emanwari out of South Carolina. I love this fit for Buffalo. Head coach Bill Burr, Sean McDermott does a great job with players like this. This is a matchup nightmare. This is a game day chess piece for Buffalo because where can he play? Well, where do you need him to play? Because he has a speed and athleticism. And I like the fact that this is someone that can be the athletic quarterback stopper. He can match up versus athletic tight ends. He can match up versus big wide receivers. He can play the too high position and play top down in that regard. So I would love to get a hold of his practice tape, how he went and defended Lenora Sellers, because he's going to see a lot of athleticism on the AFC side of things. So this was a great pick for this defense for Coach McDermott in Buffalo.
Yeah, he was described as one of those winners I talked about earlier. Josh Edwards, one of our writers, described his combine experience as, quote, a flawless athletic display of ability. So obviously he was very athletic there out at the combine. Lige, let's talk about the Chiefs as we are wrapping up this mock draft here on Monday. They've got pick number 31, and I am sure they are itching to get back to the Super Bowl and to make a team that's going to get them back to the Super Bowl. So how does number 31 fit that plan?
Yeah, the Chiefs have a glaring need at left tackle and actually right tackle as well, but none of the guys left on the board you would take in the first round. Nick Bolton, their linebacker, is going to be a free agent, so I supplement him because I believe they will lose him in free agency with Jahad Campbell. This is a guy that literally has only kind of played 1 year at interior linebacker because he was an edge guy, but because Alabama was so deep on the edge, they moved him to inside linebacker, and he just has natural instincts as well. So he's a guy that you could rush on the edge. He's the guy that can blitz up the A-gap and beat backs in pass protection and get after the quarterback. Freakishly athletic. I believe he ran a 4.2 at this past week's combine. I think he'll fit right nicely in with Steve Spagnuolo in that defense, especially if they lose Nick Bolton. 117
tackles last season. That is the most at the University of Alabama since 2003 when D'Amico Ryans did it. So coming full circle here when we talked about the Texans earlier. Renner, you're going to bring us full circle here because this is it. This is the last pick, and, of course, it belongs to Philadelphia. We did see earlier that they are releasing Darius Slay, the veteran corner there, so that news came down pretty earlier today. But who are they using that 32 pick on?
It's business as usual in Philly. It's defensive line. They may lose a couple guys. Josh Sweat to free agency, Milton Williams to free agency, Brandon Graham's going to retire. So you just keep going back to the well. Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M is a guy who, if we had this draft a year ago at this time, he could have been a top 10 pick in this class. He had that much talent. He had that good a tape at Purdue as a sophomore. Transfers to Texas A&M, got a little bit heavier. Production didn't match, but you can put that guy in the fold at only 20 years old, one of the youngest draft prospects in this entire class. Philly's going to develop him into something special. If he's at 32, I fully expect him to be a Philadelphia Eagle.
You said the words Philly special, so now Philly fans at home are freaking out. They're thinking that there's another Super Bowl on the horizon. Guys, we did it. Mock Draft Monday, post-combine edition. Check, check. Let's take a look back here at our final selections in this last round. Picks 25 through 32. We saw some wide receivers go. No Tet McMillan, though. That was a big talking point there. But we do see Luther Burden III and Matthew Golden get taken with those first 2 picks. Mike Renner is rolling business as usual when it comes to the Eagles, taking an edge rusher at number 32. Mock Draft Monday, post-combine edition, officially in the books. Guys, we've only got a few seconds here. So, Pete, I'm starting with you. Your biggest takeaway from today's mock draft was what?
Surprised that Tet McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona, didn't go in the first round. I think he will, and I think there's a possibility he actually goes in the top 10. So that's my biggest surprise.
Yeah, Pete, that was one of mine. Also, Nick Rory going as low as he did to the Bills at number 30. And then Josh Simmons, just heard some medical, some medical news that he actually might be further along. So I think he'll go in the first round as well, the offensive tackle from Ohio State.
Fans, listen, there's more than one round of the draft, so there's a lot of great players out there. So don't dive in our mentions if your favorite player for your favorite team didn't make it in round 1. We have 5 other rounds, 6 other rounds left to go, and also undrafted guys.
Yeah, I think the offensive line run is my biggest takeaway. We saw this offensive line class pretty much cooked by pick 18. Josh Simmons, though, if he is fully healthy, that's kind of the wild card in this draft class. And I think everyone who's drafted from like pick 20 on, they're praying that his knee is fully healthy by draft time.
I love what Emery said there, too, just reminding all of us sickos at home that watch all of this programming that there are still plenty of other names to be selected in the NFL draft. Guys, great work as always. I'm happy I got to celebrate my final day on air as Mrs. Sutton with you guys, by the way. So this was so much fun. We are wishing our Ryan Wilson good luck, good health as he's dealing with some stuff off camera right now. But you can catch him on the podcast with the first pick. You can scan that QR code or listen in wherever you get your podcasts.